My dad sent a family email. Effective immediately, all financial support will go to your sister. She's the future of this family. I'd been covering their bills for 3 years for $1,100 a month. So I just hit reply all and attached every bank statement, every receipt, every text where they'd begged for help. Then I added, good luck funding the future. By evening, my inbox was flooded, but I'd already blocked them all. I, 31M, just ended 3 years of being my family's ATM with one email, and I don't regret a single thing. I was sitting in my home office on a Tuesday afternoon when the email came through. Subject line, family announcement, important. My father had sent it to the entire extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even my grandmother. I opened it expecting maybe news about Thanksgiving plans or someone's health update. Instead, I got a gut punch wrapped in corporate speak. The email was brief and formal, like he was announcing a company restructuring. Effective immediately, all financial support from the family would be redirected to my younger sister. She was completing her MBA, he explained, and represented the future of the family. Resources needed to be allocated where they would provide the maximum return. He thanked me for my past contributions, but said it was time for the family to invest in more promising ventures. I read it 3 times. Each time, the words felt more surreal. For 3 years, I'd been sending my parents $4,100 every month. Not because they were destitute, but because they'd made poor financial decisions for decades and expected me to fix it. My father had taken early retirement with inadequate savings. My mother refused to downsize from their oversized house. And my sister, the golden child, the future of the family, had never been asked to contribute a single dollar. The money I sent covered their mortgage, utilities, car payments, and whatever else they deemed necessary. I'd started helping after my father called me in a panic about foreclosure. He'd asked for temporary help, just until they got back on their feet. That was 36 months ago. The temporary help had become permanent expectation. I'd paid for their comfort while living in a modest apartment. I'd delayed buying a house of my own. I'd passed on vacations and driven a 10-year-old car with a check engine light that had been on for 18 months. Every month, I transferred that money and told myself I was doing the right thing, being a good son. And now I was being phased out like an obsolete product line. My hands were shaking as I opened my banking app. I scrolled back through 3 years of transaction history. Transfers to my parents. Payments to their mortgage company when they couldn't figure out online banking. Utilities in my name because their credit was shot. The time I'd paid for my father's emergency dental work. The time I'd replaced their water heater. The time I'd bought plane tickets so they could attend my sister's graduation, where she'd accepted her acceptance to a prestigious MBA program funded entirely by scholarships and my parents' suddenly available cash. Cash that I'd provided. I opened my email and hit reply all. My father had wanted to make this announcement public, so I'd respond in kind. I spent the next hour crafting my response. I kept it factual, emotionless, clinical. I explained the situation clearly. For 3 years, I'd provided significant financial support to our parents. I attached every bank statement showing the transfers, every receipt I'd saved, every text message and email where they'd asked for help, promised it was temporary, or thanked me for being such a dependable son. I included the screenshot of my mother texting me last month asking for an extra $1,000 for my sister's birthday party. A party I wasn't invited to because I'd been too busy working overtime to afford their lifestyle. Then I wrote my conclusion. Since the family has decided to redirect resources to more promising ventures, I'm formally withdrawing all financial support effective immediately. I wish you all the best in funding the future. I'll be focusing on my own for a change. I attached a spreadsheet I'd created showing the total amount I'd sent, $147,600, not including the incidental expenses I'd covered but hadn't meticulously tracked. My cursor hovered over the send button for maybe 10 seconds. Then I clicked it. The response was instantaneous. My phone started buzzing within minutes. Calls from my mother, my father, my sister. Text messages flooded in. I watched them appear on my lock screen without opening any of them. My mother's messages devolved from confused to angry to desperate within 20 minutes. My father sent a single text telling me I was being immature and embarrassing the family. My sister sent me a paragraph about how I was being selfish and petty, how I was sabotaging her future out of jealousy. I blocked all 3 of them. Then I went through my contacts and blocked every family member who'd been on that email chain. Aunts and uncles who'd never once asked how I was doing while I funded my parents' retirement. Cousins who'd watched me sacrifice and said nothing. My grandmother, who'd always made it clear my sister was her favorite anyway. 47 people blocked in under an hour. A new personal record. The emails kept coming to my inbox. I could see the notifications piling up, but I didn't read them. I stood up from my desk, grabbed my jacket, and went for a walk. It was a cold evening, the kind where your breath fogs and your fingers go numb, but I needed to move. I walked through my neighborhood, past houses I'd dreamed of buying, and felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Relief. My phone continued buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out at one point and saw I had 63 unread emails and 22 missed calls. I turned off all notifications and kept walking. When I got home 2 hours later, I made myself dinner. Actual dinner, not the ramen and frozen meals I'd been rotating through to save money. I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. This felt special enough. I didn't check my email that night. I watched a movie, took a long shower, and went to bed early. I slept better than I had in months. Update 1. I woke up the next morning to discover my email inbox had exceeded 200 messages. I deleted them all unread and changed my email address, updating only my employer and the few friends who'd actually been present in my life. People who'd watched me struggle and offered support instead of demands. My bank account felt strange. For the first time in 3 years, my paycheck would stay my paycheck. I logged into my savings account, the one I'd been trying to build despite the constant drain, and looked at the pathetic balance. With my new situation, I could actually start building something. I called my landlord and asked about lease terms. I'd been month to month for 2 years, afraid to commit to anything because I never knew when my parents might have another emergency. He was happy to lock me into a year at my current rate. Small victory, but it felt significant. Work was a welcome distraction. I'm a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company, and I'd been passing on projects that required extra hours because I'd needed my evenings for my second job, the job of managing my parents' crisis of the week. My manager had noticed my reluctance and stopped offering me the high-visibility assignments. That morning, I told him I was available for whatever he needed. He seemed surprised but pleased. During my lunch break, I made the mistake of checking my voicemail. 27 new messages. I listened to the first 3 before deleting the rest. My mother, crying, asking how I could do this to them. Didn't I understand they were going to lose everything? The mortgage payment was due in 2 weeks. My father, angry, telling me I was destroying the family over pride. He'd raised me better than this. I owed them for everything they'd sacrificed for me. My sister, shrill, explaining that I was sabotaging her education because I was a failure who'd never accomplished anything worthwhile. Her MBA was going to benefit the entire family, and I was too stupid and short-sighted to see it. I deleted my voicemail box and disabled it entirely. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to a movie by myself. Just bought a ticket, got popcorn, and watched a mindless action film in a theater. It cost $40. 6 months ago, that would have felt like an irresponsible luxury. Now it felt like the first payment on my own future. When I got home, there was someone sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. My uncle, my father's brother, the one I'd actually liked growing up. He stood up when he saw me. He asked if we could talk, and I told him I had nothing to say. He said he understood why I was angry, but that I needed to understand the family's position. My parents had made mistakes, sure, but they were still my parents. My sister was young and had her whole life ahead of her. Was I really going to let resentment ruin her chances? I asked him where he'd been for the last 3 years. Where was his financial support? He shifted uncomfortably and said he had his own family to take care of, his own expenses. I nodded and told him that's exactly what I was doing now, taking care of my own expenses. Then I walked past him into my building. He called after me, saying I was making a mistake, that family was forever and money was temporary. I didn't turn around. Update 2. A week passed. The messages slowed from a flood to a trickle. I'd successfully cut off most avenues of contact, but a few family members had my work email and tried reaching me there. HR had a conversation with me about personal matters interfering with work. I explained the situation briefly, that I'd been financially supporting family members who were now harassing me after I withdrew support. They were sympathetic and blocked the external emails. I started therapy. I'd been thinking about it for months, but had convinced myself I couldn't afford it. Turns out when you're not hemorrhaging $4,100 a month, therapy becomes quite affordable. My therapist asked me how I'd let the situation go on so long. I told her about the guilt, how I'd been raised with the understanding that family came first, always, how my parents had sacrificed for me as a child, or so they constantly reminded me, and how I owed them for my success. My father loved to tell the story of how he'd worked 2 jobs to put me through college, conveniently forgetting the full scholarship that had covered my tuition and the part-time jobs I'd worked to cover my living expenses. The therapist asked me what I'd gotten from the relationship beyond guilt and financial drain. I couldn't answer. 2 weeks after the email, I got a letter in actual physical mail. My mother had somehow found my address, though I'd been sending them money for 3 years, so of course she had it, and written me a 5-page plea. She explained how scared they were, how they'd built their retirement planning around my support, how I was abandoning them in their time of need. She mentioned my sister's education exactly once, in passing. The real focus was on their fear of losing the house. I read the letter once and filed it away, not out of sentimentality, but because my therapist had suggested I might want documentation if things escalated legally. Things almost escalated legally. My father consulted with an attorney about whether they could sue me for abandonment or breach of some implied contract. The attorney apparently laughed him out of the office. You can't sue your adult child for stopping voluntary financial gifts. My uncle, the one who'd ambushed me at my apartment, let that detail slip in an email that somehow made it through my filters. Work became my refuge. I took on a challenging project that required learning a new framework. It demanded long hours and intense focus, which was exactly what I needed. My manager commented that I seemed more engaged than I'd been in a year. I told him I'd cleared some personal distractions and was ready to focus on my career. The project came with a significant bonus if we delivered on time. The old me would have been calculating how that bonus could help my parents. The new me was planning a vacation. 3 weeks post-email, my sister created a new social media account and tried adding me. I'd blocked her main accounts, but she was persistent. Her profile picture was her in front of her university's business school building, looking confident and polished. I blocked the new account without opening any messages. That same day, I got a call from my grandmother. I'd blocked her primary number, but she called from a neighbor's phone. I answered without checking the number, a mistake I immediately regretted. She told me I was breaking my mother's heart and disgracing the family. She said she'd always worried I had a selfish streak, and now I was proving her right. My sister was brilliant and deserved every advantage, while I was just competent enough to make decent money. Money I should be honored to share with my family. I thanked her for clarifying exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy and hung up. Then I blocked the neighbor's number too. Update 3. A month after the email, the reality of their situation apparently set in. My parents had been living beyond their means for years, propped up by my contributions. Without that money, their carefully constructed lifestyle collapsed rapidly. I know this because my uncle, the persistent one, sent me a detailed email explaining their dire situation. The mortgage was in arrears. Utilities were being threatened with shutoff. They'd applied for assistance programs, but made just enough from my father's pension to not qualify. My sister had offered to help, but as a student with no income, her contribution was symbolic at best. The email ended with a plea. Couldn't I at least help until they sold the house and downsized? I didn't respond. I'd learned that any response, even a refusal, was interpreted as an opening for negotiation. Instead, I went house hunting. With my improved financial situation and the good credit I'd managed to maintain despite everything, I qualified for a mortgage on a small house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, a 2-bedroom bungalow with a yard and a garage. But it was mine. The day I closed on the house, my mother somehow got my new number. I suspect my uncle gave it to her and called. She was crying, asking how I could buy a house while they were losing theirs. Didn't I feel any guilt? Any shame? I asked her if she'd felt any shame asking me for money every month while praising my sister as the family's only hope. I asked if she'd felt any guilt throwing a $1,000 birthday party for my sister with money I provided while not inviting me. I asked if she'd felt any remorse when my father sent that email dismissing 3 years of my sacrifice in 3 paragraphs. She hung up on me. I blocked the new number. Moving into my house was cathartic. I furnished it slowly, carefully, buying things I actually wanted instead of making do with whatever was cheap. I hung artwork I liked. I painted the bedroom a color I'd always wanted. I planted a small garden in the backyard, even though it was late in the season. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was building something for myself. My therapist asked me if I felt guilty about my parents' situation. I told her honestly that I didn't. I felt angry that they'd exploited me for so long. I felt disappointed that it took me 3 years to set boundaries. But guilty? No. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. Work continued to go well. The project I'd taken on launched successfully, and I got that bonus, $8,000. The old me would have sent it to my parents immediately, probably without them even asking. The new me put half in savings and used the other half to take a trip to Colorado with some friends from college. Friends I'd been declining for years because I couldn't afford to join them. We hiked and drank and talked, and nobody asked me for money. It was revolutionary. 2 months after the email, my sister graduated with her MBA. I know because multiple family members posted about it on social media, praising her achievement and her bright future. I wasn't tagged in any posts. I hadn't been invited to the graduation. I didn't care. I was at a barbecue with coworkers, drinking beer and laughing at stupid jokes, living my life free from the weight of their expectations. 3 months post-email, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that my parents had sold the house. They'd moved into a small condo that my grandmother helped them secure. My sister had moved back in with them to save money while she looked for jobs. The acquaintance told me this like I should feel bad, like I'd driven them to this reduced situation. I felt nothing. They'd downsized to what they could actually afford. That's called living within your means. Most people learn this concept before retirement. My life continued to improve in small, significant ways. I paid off my credit card debt I'd accumulated covering emergencies for people who thought I was an ATM. I started contributing seriously to retirement accounts. I took a weekend trip to visit a friend I hadn't seen in 5 years because I'd always been too financially strapped to travel. The friend asked me why I seemed so different, so much lighter. I told him I'd quit a job that was draining me. It was close enough to the truth. 6 months after the email, I got one final message that slipped through my defenses. My sister sent me a LinkedIn connection request with a message. She'd landed a job at a consulting firm with an impressive starting salary. She wanted me to know she'd succeeded despite my attempt to sabotage her. She hoped I was happy with myself for abandoning the family. I didn't accept the connection or respond to the message, but I did feel a grim satisfaction. She'd succeeded, which meant the family's dire predictions about my withdrawal destroying her future had been exactly what I'd suspected, manipulative nonsense designed to keep me compliant. My therapist pointed out that my lack of response showed significant growth. 6 months ago, I would have engaged, would have tried to explain or defend myself. Now I simply didn't care what they thought. I'm writing this from my home office, an actual office in my actual house. The walls are painted a deep blue I'd always wanted. There's artwork I chose hanging above my desk. The mortgage is in my name only, and I pay it with money I earn. My inbox is quiet. My phone doesn't buzz with demands disguised as emergencies. My bank account grows steadily instead of draining every month. People ask me if I regret sending that email, if I regret cutting off my family so decisively. The answer is simple. I regret nothing except the 3 years I wasted funding their dysfunction while neglecting my own future. I was never their son. I was their retirement plan. And the moment they thought they'd found a better investment, they discarded me without hesitation. So I discarded them right back. And I'm sleeping just fine. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too.